Today, I'm joined by Joe Foster himself, the founder of Reebok. Joe, again, it's great to talk with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Cameron. It's an absolute pleasure. And it's going to be delightful coming over there. Oh, we're looking forward to this. After 4 days in Mexico City with the Spanish translation of our book, Shoemaker, that
Yep.
was quite interesting, but it was what a story. We can't
y-
tell you about that now, but
Definitely. Definitely. That's amazing.
yeah.
So, to the listeners out there, I'm sure you guys have listened. We had Joe on the podcast in 2020. Very exciting episode. Such an honor to have Joe on. And since then, we've been able to stay in touch. And Joe, I'm curious, you just mentioned you were in Mexico City. What have you been up to like in the past 2 years during the pandemic as it's easing down? What has your time been looking like?
Well, it's been it's fairly unusual for us because we were living in France when the pandemic started.
Mhm.
And that was pretty good because we're right in the middle of France, the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And and so nobody about, no problems. Weather was quite nice. And then, of course, we got to the point where, well, we've got to keep moving. You know, you can stay in one place for so long, but really didn't suit us. So we came back to the UK. Of course, just before the pandemic, we got the book published. Well,
Yep.
just at the beginning, in 2020, and since then we really never stopped moving.
Wow.
Amazingly enough, people just keep on calling us up for podcasts, for this, for that, and then visits. And as I said, we were in Mexico City only 10 days ago with the translation into Spanish for the Latin American market.
Wow.
So that was quite interesting.
It's amazing. So I'm curious then, since the pandemic, have you been to the States at all, or is the Starting Small Summit going to be your first time back?
That's going to be our first time back, indeed. But we
Wow.
have a program. We're coming over because you've invited us, and that's tremendous. But then we're going to Toronto. We're going to see the new Reebok team in Toronto, and I could be calling in back into Boston to see the new Reebok team there. Of course, as you probably know,
Yep.
Reebok have been sold and are now been bought by ABG. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think in June, I think mid June, we come back to the States.
Wow.
We're
Amazing.
coming back for 12 weeks.
What
we have a
what
we
is
have
that
a
for?
12-week tour.
Wow. Is that promoting the book and going on speaking engagements? What is that for?
That's exactly it. We're promoting the book. We have speaking engagements from coast to coast. I think we start off in the Carolinas and we work our way up. We will be in Boston, and I think, Julie, are we in Chicago as well on that tour? Yes. So we're back in Chicago. So we're going
Very
to call
close.
you again and say hi.
Definitely amazing. So you mentioned the acquisition or the recent sale of Reebok. I'm curious what's going through your mind when that happened. How is the excitement looking for the future of Reebok? Just touching on that as well.
Well, I mean, Adidas bought the company for a lot of money,
Yeah.
but they didn't really look after the company. You know, they transferred a few things to Adidas, which grew Adidas, but Reebok seemed to go down, and Reebok started, instead of being a $4 billion company, they ended up somewhere around 1.5 billion. So we know that Shaq O'Neal, who is part of ABG, he
Yep.
kept on knocking on the Adidas door saying, look, if you don't want that brand, I want it. Because Shaq is in love with the brand. He loves it.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I think they decided that Adidas decided we're better off without Reebok. In fact, both companies are better separated now.
Yeah.
So now we're with ABG, and the one thing that ABG have already done, and that is to do a lot of deals around the world, globally, to make the brand visible.
Mm,
So a lot of retail deals going on, and I think you're going to see a lot more of the brand, which is
mm,
incredible.
definitely.
And I think we're going to see the brand coming back to where it was before, which is, well, in fact, they're saying by next year they hope to be on $5 billion, starting at 1.5 this year.
Tremendous.
So that is a tremendous rise. Yes.
Definitely. It's amazing. So going back to Starting Small Summit, to the listeners out there, this idea revolved around the success and the growth of the podcast from 2020. I had the idea to pitch, I want to host this conference, the speaking engagement, bringing my show to a live platform with a live audience. And the reason I went with selecting Joe was he represents such an iconic brand, has an amazing story, which you'll hear in person at Starting Small Summit. And I'm just personally really intrigued with the growth of his personal work as well. Joe, I'm curious, with branching from JW Foster and Sons and your time at Reebok, what kind of business practices do you look to share at a speaking engagement like this with our audience that have revolved as important around your career?
Well, I think that what we found, and I can only speak about how we found it, Jeff and myself,
Yes.
uh, we found that you need to have a lot of determination. You need to be in love with your brand. You need to think, yes, we're doing something important, and keep working at it. And it's
Mm.
very important when you're small because nobody knows you.
Yeah.
I remember going into retailers and saying, "Look, I'm Reebok, and this is my product," and they would look at me and say, "Who's Reebok?" "Yeah, well, yeah, who's Reebok?" And that question got to me, and it was like, "Who's Reebok?" And then they would sort of look at his shelf and they'd say, "Well, look, I've got Adidas and I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok?" That was
Mm.
another question that got at me. Why?
Yeah.
And because then it makes you think, well, why does he need it? He doesn't need it. So we've got to find out who does need it.
Mm.
And we've got to make him want us. So we had to change everything we were doing and go direct to the athlete. So we were direct selling way back then in the 1960s, purely and simply to build our trade.
Amazing. Amazing. We do at the Starting Small Summit, we're going to have a various demographic of audience. We have business students, area businesses are very excited to attend. And it's funny, I actually just personally yesterday, I saw someone wearing a Reebok, actually a piece of merchandise. And I
Right.
mentioned, we're flying out the founder of Reebok himself for a summit here locally live. And so we're getting the general public very excited. I see many people wearing Reebok clothing all the time. And I always plug it in that you're coming. Um, Justin, I do have a friend over here. Actually, can you grab Joe's book? I do want to plug to the listeners out there. If you are planning on coming to Starting Small Summit, make sure, what Joe talks about often, make sure to pick up a copy of Shoemaker, which Joe hopefully can personally at the end, maybe personally connect with you, maybe sign a copy if time is allotted. But Joe, if you don't mind, kind of share what inspired you to write Shoemaker about your journey.
Well, I retired a long time ago,
Mhm.
probably before you were born, Cameron. I, I retired in 1989. And I decided to take it easy a bit and go to Tenerife, which is a very nice island off North Africa, the Canaries, and relax in the sun. By that time, though, we were able to sort of have computers and smartphones, and I'm looking on the computer and I'm seeing Wikipedia, and I'm seeing Google, and these guys were telling me how Reebok started. This is how Reebok began. This is a photograph of Joe Foster. Who? I have no idea who it was. So
Wow.
I thought, this is all wrong. We'd better tell the story.
Mm.
And we'd better start from the beginning. And that's my grandfather, way back in 1895, inventing the spike running shoe.
Wow.
We'd better start there. And it grew from there. And the funny thing is that you don't think much of history or what went on until you start having to look back and
Yeah.
start writing about it. And we researched a lot of my grandfather, and we found, you know, he was a genius, really. He was a genius.
Yeah.
And we talk about influences today. That man influenced people way back into 1904.
Incredible.
1904, he was giving his shoes to the right people, and those people were breaking world records, were winning gold medals.
Mm.
But in those days, you didn't have the media that we have today.
Yeah.
So his I would say the extent of his business was really athletes and going to events. But even so, he got known in America, and he got known quite well, certainly with the Commonwealth, which in those days was part of British Empire, was British Empire then. So his business was big for that time. I think he said he was the world's largest makers of hand sewn athletic shoes.
Wow.
So he grew a tremendous business. But the book itself, then, it came to, why did we leave, my brother and myself? Why did we leave J.W. Foster's? Well, it's in the book. But
Yep.
the people were telling me, no, J.W. Foster just changed its name to Reebok. Well, it didn't. There's
Yes.
a whole story in there, and a lot of it.
It's incredible. Well, again, Joe, I can't wait to see you. Just it's less than 3 weeks away, Starting Small Summit. We've been talking about Starting Small Summit for close to 7 months. I planned it with yourself. We've been in the works for 10 months. But
Yes.
again, Joe, thank you again so much, and we are really looking forward to sharing this story with our audience.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Cameron. And I'm looking forward to being there. I really am. I think it's going to be fantastic. So, well, 3 weeks' time, we'll be there. Looking
Perfect.
forward to it.